So let's talk about the French Revolution. This is one of those events that didn't just change a country, it completely rewired our modern world, how we think about government, our rights, everything. But here's the thing, its story is messy, it's bloody, and it is anything but simple. So let's start with the question that has haunted historians for, well, centuries now. Was the revolution this incredible, heroic moment for freedom, or was it actually a terrifying warning of how easily noble ideals can just curdle into tyranny? That's the puzzle we're going to try and piece together today. To really get the explosion that was 1789, you have to see the perfect storm that was brewing in 18th century France. I mean, it was this incredibly volatile mix of radical new ideas, crushing economic hardship, and a government that was just completely broken. On one hand, you've got the Enlightenment. You have these radical new ideas from thinkers like Rousseau, just capturing people's imaginations, suggesting for the very first time that ordinary people, the general will, should be in charge, not kings who claimed they ruled by divine right. But then, on the other hand, there was the brutal reality of daily life. For most French citizens, philosophy was a total luxury. Their main concern was food. And in 1789, after some terrible harvests, the price of bread, their absolute staple food, shot up by a staggering 88%. And while people were starving, what was happening at the top? Well, the French crown was basically bankrupt. It had poured billions into foreign wars, like funding the American Revolution, ironically, all while its own tax system was ancient, inefficient, and just fundamentally unfair. The money? It was gone. This wasn't just a budget problem. For millions of people, it was what historians call a subsistence crisis. And that's exactly what it sounds like, an extreme situation where bad harvests and insane prices meant people literally could not afford to live. Their very survival was on the line. And here is the final spark. The historian Alexis de Tocqueville made this absolutely brilliant point. The most dangerous moment for a bad government is when it tries to reform. The king's last-ditch efforts to fix things just ended up showing everyone how truly broken the system was. It turned all that simmering anger into a full-blown crisis. So, the monarchy is overthrown. A new republic is born. But this leads to our next massive question. How did a revolution that was fought for liberty spiral into the infamous Reign of Terror, a period of extreme state-sanctioned violence? To understand this descent, you have to understand one man, Maximilien Robespierre. He started out as this principled lawyer, a passionate advocate for the poor, but he would come to embody the revolution's most radical and its most terrifying phase. See, Robespierre was a true believer. He argued that the whole point of the revolution was to create a republic of virtue, a state built on moral principles and reason. But in a time of war and chaos, he believed virtue alone just wasn't going to cut it. And this quote, this is where you see his chilling logic. For Robespierre, terror wasn't the opposite of virtue. It was an extension of it. It was a tool, a form of prompt, severe, inflexible justice that he saw as absolutely necessary to purge the nation of its enemies and build that perfect republic. This ideology unleashed the Reign of Terror. It really kicks off in 1793 with the Committee of Public Safety. Soon, political opponents are being rounded up and executed. By the summer of '94, the paranoia hits its peak in what's called the Great Terror, and executions just accelerate wildly. The revolution was literally devouring its own children, and eventually it came for Robespierre himself. But here's what's so fascinating. The moment the revolution happened, the debate over what it all meant began. And that debate has never really stopped. The story of the revolution is also the story of how we tell stories about the past. So this is a crucial point. There has never been one single accepted story of what happened. This field of studying how history gets written is called historiography, and honestly, the French Revolution is the perfect case study. Right from the get-go, you had completely opposite takes. Over in England, the conservative thinker Edmund Burke was calling it a reckless destruction of tradition. And in response, you have Thomas Paine defending it as this glorious, necessary fight for the rights of man. Those first arguments, well, they basically hardened into entire schools of thought. For generations, you had conservatives who saw chaos versus liberals who loved the ideals but hated the violence. Then the Marxists came along and reframed the whole thing as a class war, the new middle class taking down the old aristocracy. And more recently, revisionists have challenged that, saying, hold on, it was always more about political power than class. So, why does any of this matter now? Well, because this debate isn't just about the past. The story of the French Revolution is still being written, and it really shapes the questions we're asking ourselves today. Today, the conversation is so much richer, so much more complex. Historians are asking totally new questions. What about the role of women? How did this thing actually change daily life and culture? And, this is crucial, they're looking beyond France, re-examining events like the Haitian Revolution not as some little spin-off, but as a world-changing event in its own right. But through all these different arguments and interpretations, one thing is absolutely clear. Its most powerful legacy was the spread of ideas, the demand for liberty, for democratic rights, for the people to be sovereign. That became the blueprint for movements all around the world for the next 2 centuries. And that leaves us right here with this question. The revolution's core promises of liberty and equality are still at the very heart of our politics today. It forces us to ask, what kind of world are we trying to build, and what price are we willing to pay to get there? A question as alive and as urgent now as it was back in 1789.